before we blast off, say hi in the comments. It may seem small, but it helps the algorithm beam this out to more sci-fi fans. And I seriously love seeing who's part of the crew.
Deep in the methane seas of Vexanar, we Gathkrith evolved with one simple truth: strength brings survival. Our calcium-carbon exoskeletons can withstand the crushing pressure of 6 Earth atmospheres. Our 4 primary limbs can each bench press what humans would measure as 800 kilograms. Our tertiary manipulator tentacles contain enough fine motor control to assemble molecular circuits while simultaneously defending against predators with naturally secreted neurotoxins. We didn't just survive our world, we conquered it. When the Grand Gethkreth Sovereignty joined the Galactic Consortium, we ranked near the apex of physical capability among its 57 member species. Our natural armor, regenerative tissue and resistance to both radiation and temperature extremes made us natural candidates for the Consortium's peacekeeping forces. It was in this capacity that I, Nexoral Prime Enforcer, first encountered humans. My 4 primary eyes blinked in sequence as the preliminary scans came through from Earth. The secondary set didn't bother to focus. Magistrate Thulma, these readings must be incorrect, I said, passing the datapad to my superior. The gravity is barely 1 g. The atmosphere is oxygen-rich, but otherwise unremarkable. The ambient radiation levels are negligible. Thulmar's mantle rippled with amusement, sending iridescent waves across his dorsothorax. "What error are you suggesting has occurred, Enforcer?" he asked, not bothering to examine the pad. "Such conditions could not possibly produce a spacefaring species. The environmental pressure is insufficient to develop the necessary resilience. Yet here they are," Thulmar said, gesturing with his upper right limb toward the view screen where Earth hung like a blue-white marble. "Humans. Classification: endoskeletal mammalians. Sapient, tool-using, and as of 47 planetary cycles ago, warp-capable. But their physical specifications are frankly pathetic," Thulmar finished. "Their skin tears at the slightest pressure. Their bones snap under minimal stress. They can survive neither vacuum nor significant radiation. They require constant ambient temperatures within a 15-degree range. They are incapacitated by minor chemical imbalances and succumb to microscopic pathogens." I clicked my mandibles in disbelief. "How have they not been eliminated by natural selection?" "An excellent question, Enforcer. One which the Consortium has assigned us to investigate." Thulmar handed back the datapad. "You will lead the first contact delegation, assess their civilization, their technology, and most importantly, determine how they've survived long enough to achieve spaceflight without developing basic durability." The diplomatic landing zone the humans designated was a large concrete pad surrounded by metal and glass structures in what they called Washington, D.C. As our shuttle descended through the atmosphere, I watched the primitive ground vehicles scatter like frightened mollusks. My team of 6 Gathkrith enforcers towered over the human greeting party. The tallest human barely reached my secondary thoracic segment. Their skins came in various shades of beige to brown, most of them covered in artificial outer layers they called clothes. Their limbs were laughably thin, their cranial protection non-existent. "Ambassador Davis," I addressed the lead human, whose garments displayed more decorative elements than the others, suggesting higher status. "On behalf of the Grand Gathkrith Sovereignty and the Galactic Consortium, we extend greetings." The human male's facial muscles contracted into what their briefing materials identified as a smile, apparently a non-threatening gesture, despite the exposure of their blunt, ineffectual teeth. "Enforcer Nexoral," Davis responded. "Welcome to Earth. We're honored to host representatives of the Consortium." His voice registered at a much higher frequency than any Gathkreth would use in formal settings. It sounded, to my auditory receptors, like the mewling of a juvenile. "We have prepared accommodations suitable for your physiology," he continued. "If you'll follow me, we can begin the cultural exchange." As we moved toward their structures, I noticed a peculiar phenomenon. Despite our obviously superior physical capabilities, the human security personnel maintained vigilant position. They carried primitive projectile weapons, handheld devices that accelerated small metal fragments to subsonic velocities. "Ambassador Davis," I said, gesturing toward the guards, "surely you understand those weapons would be ineffective against our exoskeletons?" Davis's facial features remained in their smile configuration, but something shifted in his ocular focus. "Of course," Enforcer Nexoral. They're merely ceremonial, protocol. A falsehood, obviously. I could detect the elevated cardiopulmonary signatures of their security forces. They were prepared for violence despite its futility. Curious. Over the next 7 Earth days, my assessment team catalogued human technology, social structures, and biological limitations. The results were perplexing. Their medical technology is primitive, reported Enforcer Jalmar during our evening synthesis. They still rely on chemical compounds for pain management. Their surgeries involve physically cutting tissue rather than molecular reformation. Their structural engineering is equally unsophisticated, added Enforcer Krev. Most of their habitations would collapse under moderate seismic activity. Yet they've achieved rudimentary warp travel, I noted, bringing up the schematics we'd been provided of their first interstellar vessel. This engine configuration shouldn't work. The containment field would rupture under the quantum stress. Perhaps they've made a recent breakthrough, suggested Jalmar. Or perhaps they're concealing their actual capabilities, said Krev. I dismissed the latter notion. Impossible. The consortium's preliminary scans were thorough. Their technological development matches exactly what we would expect from their evolutionary timeline. Then how have they survived? Krev persisted. Their planet has experienced 5 major extinction events. Without natural defenses, they should have perished. The question lingered without answer. On the 8th day, Ambassador Davis invited me alone to observe what he called a military exercise. We traveled via one of their primitive aircraft, an enclosed metal tube propelled by combustion engines, to a desert region. What you're about to see is classified, Davis explained, as we approached a viewing platform overlooking a vast sandy expanse. But the President felt it important for the consortium to understand our defensive capabilities. Below us, 20 human soldiers in tan uniforms stood in formation. They carried the same ineffectual projectile weapons we'd observed earlier. Ambassador, I've studied your weapons technology, I said. Those rifles accelerate metal projectiles to approximately 900 meters per second, with impact force insufficient to penetrate even juvenile Gathkrith exoskeletons. Davis nodded. You're absolutely correct, Enforcer. He pressed a communication device. Begin the demonstration. A moment later, 3 massive metal constructs emerged from hangar doors built into the desert floor. Each stood approximately 7 meters tall, notably larger than any Gathkrith, with heavy armor plating and multiple weapon mounts. Automated battle platforms, Davis explained. No pilots, fully autonomous. My primary eyes widened. The consortium databases contained no record of such technology on Earth. The exercise scenario, Davis continued, is that these battle platforms have been hijacked by hostile forces and are targeting the infantry squad. But those soldiers have no effective weapons against such machines, I protested. Even our enforcers would require heavy ordnance to disable those platforms. Davis smiled again, but this time the expression registered differently in my threat assessment subroutines. Just watch, Enforcer. The battle platforms activated with mechanical roars, their weapon systems tracking the small human squad. My analysis predicted total human casualty rate within 30 seconds. But instead of retreating, the humans did something unexpected. They separated, moving with remarkable coordination. 6 took defensive positions, while the others retrieved small devices from their packs. The battle platforms opened fire with projectile weapons, similar to but larger than the soldiers' rifles. The humans' movements became erratic yet purposeful, no 2 following the same pattern. Despite the platform's advanced targeting systems, not a single human was hit. 3 soldiers reached positions behind the nearest platform. One threw something small that attached to its leg joint. A controlled explosion followed, and the platform stumbled but remained operational. That should have been ineffective, I said, confused by the platform's vulnerability. Exactly, Davis replied enigmatically. The demonstration continued for 11 minutes. Through tactics I could scarcely follow, the small human squad systematically disabled all 3 massive battle platforms without sustaining a single casualty. How? I asked when it was over. Those platforms outweighed your soldiers by factors of hundreds. Their armor should have been impenetrable to infantry weapons. Davis turned to me, his expression now entirely devoid of the smile gesture. Enforcer Nexoral, do you know why humans lack exoskeletons like yours? Why our skin tears so easily? Why we're so vulnerable to environmental changes? I had no answer. Because, Davis continued, we never needed them. Throughout our evolutionary history, we didn't develop physical defenses because we developed something far more dangerous. He gestured toward the soldiers, now casually inspecting the disabled battle platforms. Problem solving under pressure. Pattern recognition. Adaptation. Cooperation. Where your species evolved armor, we evolved minds that could overcome any physical threat. For the first time since arriving on this fragile world, I felt something unfamiliar ripple through my neural ganglia. It might have been fear. The Gathkrath High Command received my preliminary report with skepticism bordering on ridicule. Your assessment is compromised by observational bias, Enforcer Nexoral, Supreme Magistrate Vexer's message stated. His holographic form towered in the communication chamber, dorsothorax plates flaring with dominance markers. These humans have clearly staged demonstrations to exaggerate their capabilities. I stood at attention, all 4 primary limbs in formal position. Supreme Magistrate, with respect, I witnessed their tactical adaptability firsthand. They disabled battle platforms that would challenge our own heavy infantry. Using technology we provided them, Vexer dismissed. The consortium's cultural exchange included rudimentary engineering principles. They've merely applied those principles in unexpected ways. That itself is concerning, I countered. The speed with which they've assimilated and repurposed external knowledge is irrelevant, Vexer interrupted. The consortium has voted. Humans will be classified as a Tier 3 species, limited interstellar travel rights, restricted technology access. Probationary consortium membership only. My mandibles clicked in surprise. That classification is typically reserved for pre-industrial civilizations. The decision is final. Enforcer, their physical limitations and primitive infrastructure make them unsuitable for full integration. Your mission is concluded. Return to Vexenar immediately. The transmission ended before I could respond. Ambassador Davis received the news with that same enigmatic smile I'd grown to find unsettling. Tier 3 classification, he repeated, reading the formal communication I'd delivered to the human diplomatic headquarters. Interesting. Ambassador, I advocated for at minimum a Tier 2 designation, I said. The sovereignty was unconvinced. Davis set down the document. And what does your personal assessment tell you, Enforcer Nexoral? The question violated diplomatic protocol. Personal opinions were irrelevant to Gathkrath governance. Yet I found myself answering that my leadership has made an error in judgment. Davis nodded. We've encountered similar attitudes throughout our history. Stronger species underestimating weaker ones. It rarely ends well for the overconfident party. Before I could respond, an alarm blared from the communication array. The consortium emergency channel had activated. What's happening? Davis asked, watching me access the secure feed through my neural implant. The data flooding my consciousness was catastrophic. The Mekati Dominion has launched an attack on 3 consortium outposts in the Sigma sector. Thousands dead. The consortium defense fleet is mobilizing. Davis's expression hardened. The Mekati. Those are the silicon-based life forms from the radiation worlds, correct? The ones even your species considers physically formidable. I nodded, surprised at his knowledge of xenobiology. The Mekati evolved in high radiation environments. Their crystalline cellular structure makes them nearly impervious to conventional weapons. They've been a consortium adversary for decades, but maintained a fragile peace until now. And where is the nearest engagement? Outpost Gamma 14, approximately 3.2 light-years from your solar system. Davis tapped a communication device. General Mitchell, initiate Guardian Protocol. Authorization Davis Omega 7. He looked up at me. Enforcer Nexoral, I believe this situation may warrant reconsideration of our classification. Would you be willing to observe our response to this Merakti incursion? The human vessel defied every expectation. When Davis spoke of deploying a response, I'd anticipated perhaps one of their rudimentary warp ships carrying observers. Instead, I found myself aboard the UNSS Defender, a warship whose existence had somehow escaped all consortium intelligence. We've maintained a small defense fleet, off registry, General Mitchell explained as we toured the command center. Unlike Davis's diplomatic courtesy, the military leader made no attempt to conceal human capabilities. 7 vessels of this class, positioned throughout the solar system. The ship's interior was paradoxically both primitive and advanced. Physical switches and manual controls existed alongside technology I couldn't identify. "Your artificial gravity is remarkably stable," I noted, testing my weight distribution across my limbs. The consortium believed humans had only achieved partial gravitational manipulation. Mitchell exchanged glances with Davis. "We find it advantageous when others underestimate our technological progress." A disturbing thought formed in my neural complex. "How much have you concealed?" "Enough," Davis replied simply. The ship's alert system activated before I could pursue the question. "Approaching Gamma 14 outpost," announced the navigation officer. Mekti forces detected, 5 capital ships, numerous support vessels. "Visual," ordered Mitchell. The command center's main display activated, showing the devastation around the consortium outpost. The Mekti attack had been thorough. The station's outer rings were shattered, debris fields expanding outward. Mekti attack had been thorough. The station's outer rings were shattered. Reflected starlight in fractured patterns patrolled the wreckage, methodically destroying escape pods. My thoracic cavity constricted in horror. Those pods contained civilians, scientific personnel. "Tactical assessment?" Mitchell asked his officers, ignoring my comment. "Mekti vessels outmass us by factors of 20 to 30, reported a human female at the weapons station. "Their crystalline hulls resist conventional penetration. Energy weapons dissipate across their molecular structure. Estimated survival probability in direct engagement below 12%. Mitchell nodded as if receiving good news. "Deploy the nest system." Davis turned to me. "Enforcer, you might want to observe this carefully." The weapons officer activated a sequence on her console. "Nest deploying. Saturation in 30 seconds. On the view screen, I saw nothing remarkable. Just the defender maintaining position at the edge of the debris field, apparently passive as Mekti destroyers began moving toward us. "I don't understand," I said. "Where are your weapons?" "Already deployed," Mitchell answered. "Nest networked entropy synchronization technology. Billions of nanoscale devices released into space around us, each containing a quantum entanglement node." As he spoke, the nearest Mekti warship suddenly halted its advance. Its crystalline surface began to develop visible fractures, spreading across its hull like ice cracking under pressure. "The Mekti's primary advantage is their crystalline structure," Davis explained. "Perfect molecular alignment gives them their strength. Our nest system identifies those alignments and introduces targeted vibrations at the quantum level, vibrations that propagate through entangled particles." Before my 4 primary eyes, the massive Mekti warship, a vessel that could withstand direct hits from consortium battlecruisers, simply disintegrate. Its perfectly ordered crystal structure collapsed into randomly oriented fragments, the transition so complete that nothing larger than a few meters remained intact. The other Mekti vessels suffered identical fates in rapid succession. Within minutes, the entire attack force had been reduced to drifting crystal shards. "Impossible," I whispered. "The energy requirements alone—" "Minimal," said the weapons officer. "The nest doesn't apply force, it applies information. The Mekti vessels destroy themselves once their molecular harmony is disrupted." I struggled to process the implications. This technology, it could destabilize any ordered system. Metal alloys, composite materials. My own exoskeleton suddenly felt vulnerable in a way I'd never experienced. "Biological structures," Davis nodded, understanding my unspoken horror. "Any sufficiently ordered system can be disrupted with the right informational input. More perfect the order, the more catastrophic its collapse." "Why haven't you shared this with the consortium?" Mitchell's expression hardened. "The consortium classified us as Tier 3, deemed us too primitive for full murdership, too weak to contribute meaningfully to collective security." "That was before I filed my complete report," I protested, though the words sounded hollow even to my auditory receptors. "Your report wouldn't have changed anything," Davis said. "The Gathkreth and the other dominant Canorium species evolved believing physical superiority determines hierarchical position. You can't conceive of power that doesn't manifest as strength." The rescue operation proceeded with disturbing efficiency. Human teams in specialized suits recovered survivors from the wreckage with precision that suggested extensive training for zero-gravity operations. Training they shouldn't have needed given their limited off-world presence. As we returned to Earth's solar system with the rescued consortium personnel, I received another communication from Supreme Magistrate Vexer. Enforcer Nexorol, intelligence indicates a human vessel intervened in the Merekti attack. Explain this unauthorized action immediately. I considered my response carefully. The humans monitored all communications, of course, but they made no attempt to prevent my reply. Supreme Magistrate, I recommend immediate reclassification of human civilization to Tier 1 status with special designation Alpha. Their technological capabilities significantly exceed previous assessments. Vexer's holographic form vibrated with rage. You overstep your authority, Enforcer. The sovereignty will determine appropriate. Supreme Magistrate, I interrupted, a breach of protocol that would normally merit severe punishment. The humans neutralized the entire Merekti attack force without sustaining damage. They possess technologies unknown to the consortium that render our most significant defensive advantages irrelevant. Silence stretched across light years. Explain, Vexer finally demanded. I glanced at Davis, who stood observing my communication with that unsettling smile. I cannot explain in detail, Supreme Magistrate, but I advise immediate diplomatic engagement at the highest levels. The Humes are not what we believed them to be. After the transmission ended, Davis approached me. Your leadership doesn't believe you, he observed. No, I agreed. The Gathkreth perceive reality through the lens of physical dominance. The concept that a physically inferior species might possess superior technology contradicts our foundational worldview. A dangerous limitation, Davis noted. Yes, I said, my neural ganglia pulsing with unfamiliar anxiety. I find myself wondering what other limitations might prove fatal to our understanding. Davis's expression became contemplative. The question that should concern the consortium isn't what technologies we've revealed, Enforcer Nexorol, it's what technologies we haven't. For the first time in my existence, I felt truly vulnerable within my exoskeleton. Not because of any immediate threat, but because of a growing realization. In the cosmic hierarchy, humans weren't weak at all. They were simply operating by different rules entirely, rules that the physically dominant species had never needed to discover. The Gathkreth sovereignty's formal diplomatic delegation arrived on Earth 3 weeks after the Merekti incident. Their massive battle cruiser entered orbit with shields fully deployed, a violation of diplomatic protocol that spoke volumes about their distrust. I stood beside Ambassador Davis as Supreme Magistrate Vexer and his 12-member High Command materialized on the teleportation platform. Their exoskeletons gleamed with ceremonial polish, dorsal plates extended to maximum intimidation posture. Supreme Magistrate, I acknowledged with appropriate deference, welcome to Earth. Vexer's primary eyes fixed on me briefly before dismissing my presence. Ambassador Davis, the Consortium Council has authorized this delegation to evaluate human technological capabilities following your intervention in the Merekti conflict. Davis performed the human smile gesture. We're honored by your presence, Supreme Magistrate. Earth has prepared appropriate accommodations and a comprehensive demonstration program. Demonstrations are unnecessary, Vexer stated. We require access to your technological database, military installations, and research facilities. Full disclosure is the only acceptable outcome. I tensed, anticipating human outrage at such demands. Instead, Davis nodded agreeably. Of course, we've prepared complete access packages for your delegation. General Mitchell will escort your technical specialist wherever they wish to go. Vexer's mandibles clicked in confusion. This was not the resistance he had expected. Your cooperation is noted. As the delegation dispersed to begin their investigation, Davis turned to me. Enforcer Nexorol, would you join me for a private conversation? We walked through the diplomatic complex to a small garden area. One of the peculiar human habits I'd observed was their preservation of non-functional plant life within artificial structures. Your leadership is making another mistake, Davis said once we were alone. They seek to understand your capabilities, I replied. No, they seek to catalogue our weapons. Davis picked up a small stone and examined it. They fundamentally misunderstand what makes humanity dangerous. Then explain it to me, I said. If not your technology, then what? Davis tossed the stone into a small water feature. Do you know what the most significant difference is between your species and mine? Physical resilience, I answered immediately. No, it's our relationship with death. The statement confused me. All species have biological termination, but not all species have evolved with the constant awareness of their own fragility. Davis's voice took on a quality I hadn't heard before. Every human who has ever lived has known from childhood that they could die at any moment. A fall, a disease, a predator, a rival. He turned to face me. Your species evolved with exoskeletons that protect you from most environmental threats. You live long lives relatively free from constant danger. Death comes predictably after centuries. For most of human history, death has been our constant companion from birth. That would produce evolutionary pressure toward heightened survival instincts, I acknowledged. It produced something far more significant, Davis said. It produced a species that spends every waking moment preparing for threats that don't yet exist. A chill rippled through my neural ganglia. The nest system wasn't developed to fight the Mechti, he continued. We created it decades ago as a thought experiment. What if we encountered a crystalline species resistant to conventional weapons? So we designed a countermeasure, not for an enemy we knew, but for one we imagined might someday exist. You prepare for hypothetical threats? We prepare for all threats, Davis corrected. It's built into our psychology at a level so fundamental that we aren't even conscious of it. Over the next 5 days, the Gathkreth delegation conducted their investigation with increasing frustration. Each facility they inspected revealed impressive but not revolutionary technology. The nest system components were freely provided for analysis, yet the underlying principles seemed deceptively simple. They are concealing their advanced research facilities, Vexer insisted during the High Command's private conference, unaware that I had been instructed to monitor their communications. The technology they demonstrated against the Merekti cannot have emerged from these primitive laboratories. The principles appear sound, countered Science Director Manolak. Quantum entanglement across nanoscale networks could indeed produce the observed effects, but their implementation is so elegant, so efficient. Our simulations suggest we would need facilities 10 times larger to reproduce similar results. Then they have somehow miniaturized quantum computation beyond theoretical limits. Vexor concluded. We must locate these hidden facilities. The Gathkreth initiative to covertly scan Earth from orbit revealed nothing unusual. Deep planetary scans showed exactly what the humans claimed, a relatively typical industrialized world with the expected manufacturing and research infrastructure. No massive hidden installation, no extraordinary energy signature. On the 6th day, everything changed. A consortium emergency transmission reached Earth. The Rekti Dominion had launched a full-scale invasion of consortium space, dozens of worlds under attack. Defensive fleets overwhelmed. The Rekti apparently considered their defeat at Gamma 14 to be human interference in their rightful conquest, and now sought vengeance against both humans and the consortium. The Gathkreth High Command gathered with human leadership in the crisis center. The tactical display showed Merekti forces advancing on multiple fronts, including a battle group headed directly for Earth. 7 Merekti dreadnoughts approaching Sol system, General Mitchell reported. Estimated arrival, 26 hours. Deploy your nest technology immediately, Vexor demanded. The consortium will provide reinforcements, but they cannot arrive before the Merekti. The nest system has limited range, Mitchell explained. We would need to position our ships directly in the Merekti approach vector. Then do so. Vexor's exoskeleton plates flared with agitation. Why do you delay? Ambassador Davis had remained silent throughout the exchange. Now he stepped forward. Supreme Magistrate, before we commit to military action, we should attempt diplomatic resolution. The entire Gathkreth delegation's posture registered disbelief. Diplomatic, with the Merekti? Vexor's translator struggled to convey his incredulity. They are genocidal expansionists. They do not negotiate. Nevertheless, we should try, Davis insisted. And Force Inexoral, would you join me in the communication chamber? I believe the Merekti might be more receptive to an offer delivered through a consortium representative. I followed Davis, confused by this apparent retreat from confrontation. The Merekti were indeed beyond diplomatic engagement. Their crystalline neural structures processed information in patterns that made them pathologically aggressive toward non-silicon life. In the communication chamber, Davis activated a direct quantum channel to the approaching Merekti fleet. This is Ambassador Thomas Davis of Earth. I request communication with the Merekti command. To my surprise, A response came almost immediately, the view screen filled with the fractured, prismatic structure of a Mekti overlord, a senior commander in their rigid hierarchy. Human interference. The translated voice grated like stone against metal. You will be eradicated. We seek peaceful resolution, Davis continued calmly. There is no need for further conflict. The Mekti overlord's crystalline form shifted in what I recognized as aggressive posturing. Your species destroyed our battle group. The punishment is extinction. Davis nodded. I understand your position. However, I should inform you that what you witnessed at Gamma 14 was a localized application of technology we would prefer not to deploy on a larger scale. Threats are irrelevant. Your nest weapons require proximity. Our fleet will destroy your vessels before deployment range. Davis glanced at me, then back to the Mekti. The nest system was merely one application of our quantum information technology, a relatively minor one. Something in his tone made my neural ganglia pulse with warning signals. Before you commit to this attack, Davis continued, I am obligated to inform you that 13 minutes ago we transmitted a quantum entangled information package to the galactic coordinates of your homeworld, Rec Prime. The Mekti overlord's form stiffened, a nearly imperceptible reaction that would be invisible to most non-crystalline observers. Impossible. Rec Prime's location is secure. We've known its location since our first contact with the consortium, Davis replied. Just as we've analyzed the molecular structure of your civilization's architectural and technological systems. He tapped a control, sending data through the quantum channel. This is a live feed from our monitoring systems focused on Rec Prime. The screen split, showing a distant view of a crystalline world, brilliant facets, reflecting its star's light in geometric patterns of breathtaking complexity. Beautiful, isn't it? Davis remarked. Your species has achieved remarkable harmony between biological and architectural forms. As we watched, a subtle change began across the planet's surface. The perfect crystalline structures, continent-spanning city complexes that had evolved over millennia, began developing visible distortion patterns. What is happening? The Mekti overlord demanded, genuine alarm in its translated voice. Quantum resonance cascade, Davis explained with clinical detachment. Similar to our nest system but operating on a planetary scale, the entangled particles we transmitted are propagating harmonic disruptions through your world's crystalline matrix. The distortions accelerated, fault lines spreading across entire regions of the planet. Stop this immediately. The Mekti's communication took on a frequency I'd never heard from their species. We can, Davis confirmed. The process is reversible for approximately 7 more minutes. After that, the cacique becomes self-sustaining. The visual feed showed Mekti structures beginning to fragment, perfect geometric forms collapsing into chaotic rubble. Your terms? The Overlord's question came without further posturing. Immediate withdrawal from consortium space. Return to your recognized boundaries. A formal non-aggression pact with both humans and the consortium, to be maintained for no less than 500 years. Agreed. Reversal code. Transmit now. Davis nodded to an officer I hadn't noticed standing in the shadows. The human entered a command sequence, and the degradation on Rec Prime visibly halted, then began to reverse as the crystalline structures re-established their molecular alignment. Confirmation of fleet withdrawal required, Davis added. On the tactical display, the Mekti vessels were already altering course, accelerating away from Earth and other consortium worlds. Withdrawal confirmed, the Overlord stated. Non-aggression accepted. Formal treaty transmission follows. The communication ended, leaving the chamber in silence. I struggled to process what I had witnessed. You could have destroyed their entire civilization. Yes, Davis acknowledged. But the quantum transmission, the entanglement network required would be beyond anything in the consortium's theoretical model. Davis turned to me, his expression unreadable. Enforcer Nexoral, did you ever wonder why humans have achieved so much despite our physical limitations? Before I could answer, he continued. Every other species in the consortium evolved under consistent environmental pressures that shaped their physiology for specific survival advantages. Your exoskeleton, the Volran atmospheric processing organs, the Gendat regenerative cellular structures. He gestured to his own fragile form. Humans evolved with none of these advantages. Instead, We developed pattern recognition and problem-solving capacities that allowed us to imagine threats before they materialized and create solutions before they were needed. The quantum network was developed centuries ago, he interrupted. Not for war, for communication, for scientific research. Its weapons applications were theoretical models we never intended to implement. The implications staggered me. You've had this capability throughout your contact with the consortium. Enforcer, humanity has spent its entire existence preparing for existential threats. It's embedded in our psychology, in our social structures, in our scientific inquiry. We imagine the worst so we can prevent it from occurring. He stepped closer. The Merekti attack today wasn't a surprise to us. We had countermeasures prepared before we ever left our solar system. Not because we anticipated the Merekti specifically, but because we anticipated something like them. And the Gathkreth? I asked, my neural pathways processing the terrifying implications. Did you entertain us as well? Davis's expression softened. Of course. Just as we've prepared for every conceivable first contact scenario, from benevolent cooperation to immediate hostility. What countermeasure did you prepare for my species? For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, your exoskeletons derive their structural integrity from calcium-carbon molecular bonds in a specific resonance pattern. We identified the frequency that would disrupt those bonds during our first encounter. My 4 primary limbs trembled involuntarily. You could have, at any time. We would never, Davis assured me. That's what your leadership fails to understand. Humanity doesn't develop these capabilities because we want to use them. We develop them because having them means we rarely need to use them. He placed his hand on my exoskeleton in a gesture that translated across species as trust. Today we demonstrated not just power, but restraint. We could have destroyed the Merekti homeworld. Instead, we offered peace. Your mercy was strategic, I observed. All mercy is, he replied. That's the final difference between our species and Force Inexorable. You evolved to survive through strength. We evolved to survive through foresight. The Gathkreth High Command received news of the Merekti withdrawal with stunned silence. Supreme Magistrate Vex's dorsothorax plates remained flat against his body, a sign of extreme psychological distress in our species. This quantum network, he finally said, we demand access to its specifications. Davis shook his head. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Supreme Magistrate. You demonstrated its capabilities against the Merekti. The consortium requires this technology for mutual defense. With respect, Davis replied, we didn't share this technology precisely because of reactions like yours. You immediately see its military applications rather than its potential for communication, exploration, and scientific advancement. Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of aggression. The consortium will not tolerate technological hoarding by a Tier 3 species. For the first time, I saw Davis's diplomatic composure crack. Perhaps it's time for the consortium to reconsider its classification system. Earth will submit a formal petition for Tier 1 status, effective immediately. Denied. Vexa snapped. Your civilization lacks the physical resilience and evolutionary development for Tier 1 classification. Davis smiled. Not the diplomatic gesture I'd grown accustomed to, but something colder. Supreme Magistrate, I don't think you understand. This isn't a request. The chamber fell silent. The Terran Council has authorized me to inform the consortium that Earth will no longer accept Tier 3 designation. We will assume Tier 1 status with all associated rights and privileges. In exchange, we will share certain technological developments, those we deem appropriate for widespread distribution. Vex's thoracic segments expanded in outrage. This is unprecedented. The Gathkreth sovereignty will never. The Gathkreth sovereignty, Davis interrupted. Just witnessed what happens when a species underestimates humanity's capabilities and intentions. He gestured toward the tactical display still showing the Merekti retreat. We prefer peace. We prefer cooperation. But make no mistake, Supreme Magistrate, we have prepared for every possible future, including ones where the consortium becomes hostile to human interests. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Later, as the Gathkreth delegation prepared to depart, I found myself alone with Vexa in the observation lounge. Your report was accurate, Enforcer Nexorol, he acknowledged, stress harmonics evident in his voice patterns. The humans are not what we believed them to be. No, Supreme Magistrate, they are something far more dangerous than physically powerful species. Explain. I chose my words carefully. Every species in the consortium evolved to survive in their environment. The humans evolved to survive in any environment, including ones that don't yet exist. Vexa's primary eyes focused on Earth visible through the viewport. You believe we should accept their terms. I believe we should recognize reality, Supreme Magistrate. The humans don't want domination or conquest. They want security. If we provide that through cooperation, they will be valuable allies. And if we don't? I recalled Davis's words about the calcium-carbon bonds in our exoskeletons. Then we face a species that has already imagined our extinction and prepared for it as a contingency, long before we gave them reason to do so. Vexa departed with the High Command, returning to Vexanar with recommendations that would reshape consortium policy toward Earth. I remained behind as the first Gathkreth liaison officer to the newly recognized human Tier 1 civilization. In the centuries that followed, humans became integral to the consortium, sharing technologies that transformed interstellar travel, communication, and scientific research. They never revealed the full extent of their quantum network capabilities, nor did they deploy their countermeasures against any species, not even during the Ontari conflict, when provocation would have justified such action. Most species came to view humans as benevolent allies, their early physical fragility forgotten as they became the consortium's innovators and problem solvers. Yet I never forgot what I learned during those first encounters. The most terrifying species in the galaxy isn't the strongest or the most aggressive. It's the one that spends every moment imagining how they might be destroyed and preparing to ensure they never will be.